Hi there, my name is Lauren and welcome to my Tunisian Crochet channel, or welcome back if you've been here before. Since I already covered the basics of Tunisian Crochet in my first video, for this one I want to teach 2 more stitches. Alright, since I'm teaching stitches today, I figured I'll go with a very neutral yarn. We'll do our first things first, which is to remove this yarn from inside, and then it looks like the other tail is already set up for me right here, so great. Alright, so I don't think I showed this in the last video, but here's another way to make a slip knot. You can just wrap the yarn around your hook like that. Make sure it's not too tight yet. And there you go. So I'll go ahead and chain 10 for this. Alright, so we've got 10 stitches on our hook. Just like before, we're going to go into the back bumps and make our foundation row. Chain 1 and do our return pass. My tension is pretty tight, so I'm kind of struggling to get through some of these first stitches, but hopefully it'll get better soon. Whoops. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and start our first row of the Tunisian full stitch. So for the first row, we'll work into the first space, the space between the first and second stitches. And pull up a loop, and then we'll just go into every space down the line. Now in the very last, when you get to the last space, don't go in there. Since we went into the first space here, we're gonna skip this last space and we're gonna do our regular ending to a row, which is to go under these 2 strands here. And we will chain 1 and then begin our return pass. So I changed lenses today to film this, and it's a manual focus lens now instead of the autofocus, but I couldn't really get the autofocus to cooperate with me 100% of the time, so hopefully we don't have too many blurry shots today if I stay in the right spot. So you can actually see the full stitch starting to form here. Remember, in the first row, we went into the first stitch, the first space that was here between the first and second stitches. So this time we're going to skip that space and go into the next space. And just work all the way down, just like before. Whoops. It's getting kind of bunched up. I want to make sure I go in the right spot here. And since we skipped the first space on the second row, that means we're going to go into the space at the end of this row instead. So remember, there's always 3 strands to every stitch. So you want to be on this side of this strand, because 1, 2, and 3. Go under there. And now you still need to do the very last stitch here, just like every other row. And let's just make sure we have the same amount of stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So if you're ever confused if you're doing the right thing with this stitch, you always can just count your stitches at the end of the row. And if you have the same number as what you started with, then you're on the right track. Chain 1. And then pull through 2 all the way down. So here it is after 2 rows. Remember, since we skipped the first stitch on the last row, now we're going to alternate and go in between these first 2 stitches here. And the space that you want to go into is always going to be the valley between the 2 mountains, if that helps. Because this is a stitch, and this is a stitch. So don't go in here, go in here. This is the full stitch, so it does get very bunched up and kind of confusing to work with, especially in the first few rows. So again, we went into the first space here, so that means we're skipping this space and we are doing our last stitch to end the row, just like always. Chain 1. And do our return pass again. I'll go ahead and do a few more rows, but I'm pretty sure you've got the hang of this by now. So last row, we went into the space. You can see it right there. Skip that. So there's the full stitch. This is a really good stitch for tote bags too if you use it sideways, because you would want it to stretch this way, but not vertically. So actually, I might end up making a tote bag out of this. Alright, so now that I've shown you guys the full stitch, let's move on to the Tunisian honeycomb stitch. So we start with, well, first of all, this is assuming you've already made your first chain and done the foundation row. In this case, we've already made a swatch under it, so I'm just gonna begin the pattern right now. So for this stitch here, you're going to do a Tunisian simple stitch, and then we're going to do a purl. So the thing to pay attention to with purl stitch is which way you're wrapping the yarn around your hook. So just follow how I'm doing it in the video, and make sure you're wrapping the yarn the right way. So we'll bring the yarn to the front of the hook. We'll go in here as if we're doing a simple stitch, and now we're putting the hook back in front of the yarn again. Now we wrap this around, and I use my thumbnail, or if you don't have fingernails, you can just use your thumb, to hold this down. That way I can easily pull through right here. That's all we do, the Tunisian simple stitch and then this purl. So Tunisian simple stitch, then bring the yarn in front, bring the hook in front, hold this down, and pull through. If you're struggling to do this, don't worry, that's totally normal. And you don't have to do it exactly the way I'm doing it in the video either. You can make your own method for this. Just like how I always use my pointer finger to pull a stitch down, even though not everyone does that. So, yarn in front. If you don't hold that down, this is what might happen. Sometimes you'll just get stuck because you've turned the hook and now it's pulling that other one in as well. So that's why I always hold it down and give it enough slack until I pull through, and then I release it and I kind of tighten it up a little bit. That's really all you have to do. Now we're getting to the end of our row. These are the last two stitches right here. So we'll do our Tunisian simple stitch and then finish the row off like we always do. Chain one and begin our return pass. I always have a tight tension, especially, it seems like especially when I am recording myself crochet. There's just so many things going on. Okay. So right now it's kind of looking like something strange is happening, right? Definitely different from the full stitch. So for the second row of this pattern, we're going to start on our purl stitch. So we bring the yarn to the front, go into this first stitch here, let the yarn go, and pull through. Now we will do our Tunisian simple stitch. And when you're doing the honeycomb stitch, every time you're doing a simple stitch, the stitch that the simple is going into will be very tight and small like this. And that's because on the last row it was a purl. We're at our second to last stitch again. Last time we did a simple stitch. This time we're going to purl. And finish the row, same as always, under these 2 strands. Starting on the simple this time. Chain 1, So there you have it, the Tunisian full stitch and the Tunisian honeycomb stitch. Now, one thing I didn't put in the last video was how to bind off, and that's just because the video was so long that I'm sorry, but we didn't have time for that. So I guess I'll just show you that real quick right now. So start it like it's a Tunisian simple stitch, but then pull through the other loop. And this will just finish the edge so that it's not so sparse and it matches the other rows. And don't make it too tight like I'm starting to. Always keep some slack when you're casting off, that way your edge doesn't pucker. If you make the edge too tight, then you'll have a piece that's lopsided, basically. Just like if you cast on too tight. If this were a real project that you were actually finishing right now, you would just cut this yarn, leave a tail maybe 6 to 10 inches, depending on your project size. That way you have something to weave in. But I'm gonna salvage this yarn, so I'm not gonna do that today. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something. And also, hopefully I was able to edit it down into a reasonable amount of time. But yes, again, thank you so much for watching, and let me know if you have any other stitches you want to learn. I like teaching 2 stitches at once. I feel like it's a little more fun that way. It gives you something to experiment with, and it doesn't really take all that much longer. So yeah, if there's any that you would like to learn how to do in the next video, then just drop a comment or follow me on Twitter. My username is Lauren Muller with a 3 instead of the E. And go ahead and hit that subscribe button as well. That way you can catch me in my next video.